How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about manufacturing. And some of you or many of you will know that I transitioned my early career while I was still studying electrical engineering from embedded systems into manufacturing or industrial automation. So ultimately, I've spent many years now, over a decade, in manufacturing, automating different systems, working with technicians, working with engineers, different managers, and ultimately, I believe that I have quite a bit of experience where I can explain what manufacturing truly is about. And because I'm super passionate about the industry, have already answers to a lot of these questions. Ultimately, I want to have a conversation about what manufacturing is, what are some of the key areas of manufacturing, how they normally operate, and ultimately, it should be a sanity check for me as well as I walk through some of these steps. So I'm going to put a very big label here called manufacturing, and I'm going to start with the basic conversation on which we're going to expand as we move forward. So what is manufacturing in a very basic sense? So a lot of the objects in our daily lives are manufactured, and many of them go through a different transformation process depending on which stage of the product they're in. So for example, I'm holding currently a marker which is made out of plastic, which has a tip that is going to be made out of maybe cotton or other kinds of plastic, and it also is imbued with ink, which is going to be alcohol based. So there's going to be a lot of different processes that ultimately allow me to hold something like this in my hand and utilize it as a product in my daily life. So manufacturing is ultimately going to take raw materials and transform them into a finished good. So I'm going to draw this black box, which ultimately takes an input and spits out an output. And like I said, this is going to be your raw materials, and this is going to be your product or finished goods. But the story doesn't necessarily end there. It's a lot more complex than that, as you can imagine. So first of all, let's start on the left-hand side. So here we have raw product currently with a single arrow pointing towards the black box that we've drawn. So naturally, you can, as I've explained here with this specific product, you can expect there to be multiple raw ingredients going into the manufacturing facility. And once again, there could be many examples. This could be, for example, your computer has thousands, if not millions of different parts. You have different raw ingredients from anywhere from printed circuit boards to the copper on them, to the gold materials, to the chips, to the glass that's going to be your screen. There's going to be a lot of different ingredients that go into manufacturing. So this is where maybe the next conversation comes in. You have very little manufacturing that's going to take a very raw product and transform it all the way at the end. And what I mean by that is, in many instances, there's going to be a chain of manufacturers, right? So here, for example, I'm going to draw a few more boxes which are going to take other raw ingredients, and they're going to transform those raw ingredients into a product which will be the input now of this specific box. So think of it as there's going to be a different scheme for different manufacturer to utilize different raw products. But when we say raw product, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an element on the periodic table. It could just mean that, for example, here it's going to be pellets of plastic, and pellets of plastic can be used for a variety of different products. They're going to go into this factory to produce something else. So imagine this as a huge mesh of different facilities interrelated, essentially transforming raw materials into finished goods between themselves in order to create other specific products. So here, and probably where you see where I'm going with this, it's the concept of supply chain. So supply chains are very important because your manufacturing facility is going to have to interface with a lot of other facilities that create the raw materials that you need. And of course, I'm oversimplifying this process a little bit because you also have distributors, you also have different countries that might sell some of those raw materials. So it becomes increasingly complex to source different materials for your production, but also handle the supply chain issues and implications output of your specific product. So I'll give you another example. I've worked for many manufacturers that would create a finished good for consumers. The consumers do not buy directly from the manufacturer. The manufacturer is going to build up pallets of product. Those pallets of product are going to go to what's called distribution centers. The distribution centers are going to be of very large retailers who then will distribute that product to what you would see, for example, at Costco, at Target, at Walmart. So there's going to be also implications of your product being sold to the consumer. So here we're going to say consumer, and product goes to the consumer, but in reality, there's going to be distributors of different sellers and vendors. That's also where you could tie in e-commerce. Ultimately, it is also part of the world of manufacturing that we're currently dealing with. I want to maybe move us a little bit from the inputs on the raw ingredient side into the actual manufacturing facility. So manufacturing at its core, what does it actually look like? So for that specific conversation, I wanted to start real small. So if you wanted to make a product inside of your house, for example, you could probably not put together computers except if you buy spare parts, put them together, and that's called an assembly line. But ultimately, you could be putting together something small. Let's take, for example, a bottle of a specific hot sauce, right? So let's assume that you've bought some peppers on the market. Then you're able to add a couple of ingredients into those specific peppers, bottle them in a jar or in a bottle, and then you're going to sell them on the market. So that is a very small scale food and beverage manufacturing. So what does that actually look like? Number one, as we've discussed, you needed to get the raw ingredients. You also needed to get the bottles, or I guess packaging, for your specific sauce or your specific product. You needed to get the labeling, and then you needed to get maybe boxes to package a lot of bottles into one specific container that you could then sell at the market. So that is as simple as it gets. Like I mentioned, this is probably the black box, what it looks like. As you start to scale that operation, you're looking to get more efficient. If you're, for example, producing 10 bottles an hour, you're trying to now produce 10 bottles a minute. You start buying equipment. And so that equipment can start being a replacement for some of the tasks you're doing. Ultimately, I'm going to make this facility bigger. As you talk about manufacturing, you're starting to talk about automation. And automation, like I said, is machinery that allows you to accomplish more faster. So here, instead of having people doing the work, you start having machines that are operated by people within a production line. So each machine has a very specific purpose, putting on the cap to applying the label to putting those bottles in a case. And of course, before you ask, could you in theory make that into a single machine? The answer is yes, but usually the more specialized machines, so the more separated machines, are what you'll see on the production floor, because it becomes difficult to create the tooling for the machine to be able to handle a lot of different tasks. But right now, for manufacturing, each and every machine is going to perform a specific task. So let's assume that you've now scaled your production to 3 machines. And again, let's assume there may be some kind of a filler, some kind of a can machine, and a palletizer. So now you're essentially producing pallets worth of boxes that are going out the door. You need to start thinking about the people running the facility. You have your operators at the machines, you have a supervisor that's going to oversee multiple production lines depending on how many there are. You're going to have a shipping and receiving dock, so there's going to be trucks taking the finished product out of your facility. You're going to have receiving of your raw product, so you're going to have different departments handling the day-to-day operations of your specific manufacturing plant. Now, you're looking to scale even further, so now you're going to ultimately copy and paste, and this is what makes manufacturing very interesting. You're going to take the existing line and you're going to copy and paste that in parallel. There's going to be a lot of sales and marketing depending on the need of your product, but now you're taking the same raw materials and you're able to essentially multiply the amount of finished goods produced at the end of your factory, so that you've now doubled the production rate for that specific product. And once again, I'm oversimplifying here, but ultimately you can see the pattern where you can scale this, typically scale given time, money, of course, and resources in terms of professionals to be able to reapply these lines and meet the demand of the market. This is where I want to maybe transition the conversation a little bit to some of the concepts you've probably heard. So something like Lean Six Sigma is going to be very foundational in manufacturing. So these are concepts that essentially drive how different products are produced. And to simplify things, you're either pulling product or you're pulling product from the shelves or you're pushing products onto others depending on how you forecast the demand. And so I do want to explain some of those concepts a little bit, right? So imagine that your facility is able to make one pallet a week just to keep things a little bit simple. So this is going to be a little square here. There's going to be a pallet here. There's going to be 3 pallets here. And these pallets start accumulating, right? Your production is running well. Your crew is running its maintenance shifts really well. So everything's doing good. And you're starting to accumulate those pallets. Now, on your sales side, right, you're starting to ship this product out the door on trucks going to a distribution facility, which ultimately gets them to the customer. Once per week, you have a new pallet that is being generated. If the pallets are consumed at one per week, obviously you don't have any issues. Your production's running great. You're making a good margin on your product. And again, that's a whole other conversation. But ultimately, if it's consumed at once per week, there's going to be no issues. Now, imagine that you're starting to consume 2 pallets per week. We need more production. We're going to be consuming or we're going to be demanding more pallets per week than we're currently producing. So then the question becomes, can we add another line that will, again, in this case, if we're doing 1 to 2, we need to essentially double the facility, whether that's speed up the lines or increase the number of lines, or we're going to have to do something else, maybe open a second site. But ultimately, more demand for sales is usually a good thing. That means that you simply cannot meet the demand. You can go to the bank with those letters of intents or LOIs and get the capital you would need in order to finance the operation expansion. The other side, right, which could be that you're consuming less. So what's going to start happening is now you're starting to accumulate pallets, and at some point your management or maybe even yourself is going to have to make the decision, hey, we need to put a brake on this. We need to stop operation. Maybe we need to remove these 2 production lines. Maybe we even need to fire some individuals because there's simply not enough work for them because we're unable to get the demand we need for the product that we're producing. Either you shut down the lines, you fire some of those individuals, you produce a different product, you diversify and see if you can retool some of your lines to a different product. But ultimately, it leaves you in a worse position than if you had the same demand matched to what you're producing. So where does this push and pull come in? If you have a customer, so your customer is going to tell you, I'm going to be pulling a pallet because I've consumed this pallet, right? They're also going to be sitting on pallets, and those pallets are going to be put in front of customers at Costco, at Target, at Walmart, and they're going to be pulling the pallet every time it's depleted and putting it in front of the customer on the shopping floor. And so once the pallet runs out, so for example, they have a buffer of 2 pallets, they lose a pallet, they're going to tell you, hey, we need one more pallet. They run out of that pallet, they're going to say, hey, we need another pallet. So ultimately, they're pulling out of your system. And you, based on the amount of pallets that you currently have in your warehouse or maybe on standby, you're also requesting a pull from your machine, which then cascades down and ultimately demands for more raw materials at the end of the facility. Now, the push methodology is going to be different. The push methodology is going to forecast what the demand from that specific distributor is going to look like, distributor or retailer in this case. And it's going to say, look, last year they ordered 2 pallets per month. So in this case, they've ordered 2 pallets per month, which translates to 24 pallets over the year. So we need to be delivering them probably the exact same number of pallets. We need to produce 24 pallets the next year. That's what we're forecasting. So we will be making those pallets no matter what. We're going to be pulling the materials that we need in order to make those pallets no matter what. We will be producing the 24 pallets in this fiscal year, rain or shine, regardless of any changes made. So that's going to be us pushing out the pallets regardless of the demand of that specific customer. So those are going to be 2 systems. What is the reality? What would you expect to see on the plant floor? It's going to be a mix of the two, right? Because ultimately nothing, first of all, nothing is perfect, but also there's going to be different demands depending on the product, depending on the customer. If you've been working with a customer for the last 50 years, you're going to treat them very differently than a new customer that's only been around for 2 months. Similarly, on the raw ingredient side, if you've been buying the same materials that have never fluctuated in price, that have always been very easy to source or a commodity, you're going to be treating that very differently than if you're relying on high risk goods that may fluctuate or double in price the next fiscal year. And that's going to put some complications on how you source and how you supply different materials. But ultimately, so I wanted to make this video explaining manufacturing in a nutshell. That's going to be your entire process. Hopefully, this paints a good picture or a good starting point if you're looking at manufacturing as a career, if you're managing some of the manufacturing operations, if you're looking into some of the closely related fields, like we discussed a little bit about supply chain. We even talked a little bit about sales and marketing and what it takes to sell some of those goods. There's obviously a lot to those disciplines. So if you have any specific questions, don't hesitate to leave them to me or send them on any of the media that we're in, and I'll see you next time.